Hi everyone, Christian Butzek, Vancouver Realtor. Now, for today's video, I want to talk to you about short-term rental restrictions here in Vancouver and the results, because it's all about the results. Now, remember in 2018, the spring, the city of Vancouver brought in these tough new rules, right? They said, if you're going to Airbnb, it's got to be your principal residence, right? And so it's got to be a room in your house, for example. It can't be a second or a third property. You have to rent it out for 6 months or more to a long-term tenant, and so on, right? Well, and what's the result been since they implemented this? As of late 2019, a McGill professor did a study. He found that 2,000 units came off Airbnb, and of those, 300 went back into the rental pool. That is significant. I mean, only 300 of 2,000, that's a little over 10%. That does nothing for the rental crisis, which is affecting the city of Vancouver, where the issue we have is a lack of supply. We have a city where we have 30 to 40,000 people moving here every year, and 300 units is it's not going to make a difference. It's a drop in the bucket. And so what happened here? What went wrong? Well, I think the first thing that went wrong here is the city was driven by a political motive here, and it really was the outcry of people complaining about rents going up. And of course, the quick and easy solution is to find one person or one thing and blame everything on them, right? Say, oh, it's all short-term rentals, it's all Airbnb. That's why rents are going so high. If we, those greedy landlords, boy, that is really off the mark. As we can see by the fact, only 300 of those 2,000 actually went into the rental pool. And so, when a city brings out legislation like this, they really have to think it through. I think the second thing is, if we look at an average family that was using, let's say, a basement suite and renting it out for the summer, let's see how and why they would do this. Not everybody who owns a house on the west side worth $4 million. There's a lot of people who own 50-year-old bungalows on the east side, right? And they might have a basement suite and a separate entry from the backyard. And they might rent that out on Airbnb over the summer. And the rest of the time, they might leave it empty. And I think that's what we saw happen, is we saw a lot of people who, they didn't want to deal with a long-term tenant having them come and then having to evict them. Why? Because maybe they have their parents come over for 2-3 weeks for Christmas and New Year's. Maybe mom and dad come over from China or Toronto for the summer for a month and spend time with the family and the kids, right? Grandkids. And the rest of the time, the family says, okay, we'll Airbnb it for 2 months in the summer, and the rest of the time we'll leave it empty. And so it's an easy way to make some extra cash. And instead, a lot of those people were vilified as being greedy landlords, taking advantage of Airbnb and excluding long-term renters. And actually, the two are two separate things. And I think the city really missed that. And, having that option, I think having the option of renting your suite downstairs provides extra cash for that family. That means more money that they can spend, whether it's on retail, taking the family out to restaurants. It provides more option for tourists as well coming to the city. They're going to spend money in our communities, especially in the summertime. And also, there's incentives here to actually have landlords put their basement suites back into the rental market. But when we put too many rules, too many restrictions, too many obligations, people say, you know what, forget about it. I don't have to evict the tenant and go through this. And especially when it's your own house. So, when we talk about the fixed term tenancy provision that we had previously, right, where a landlord could say, you're here from January 1 to December 31st, and then you have to leave. Well, in an apartment building or in a condo, it makes sense to allow that to move into a month-to-month tenancy so that tenants don't have to leave or they're not kicked out. That makes perfect sense. You want to protect them that way. But if it's somebody's house, it's kind of hard to force somebody to have to rent out the basement to a tenant forever. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, right? So somehow the city of Vancouver, the planning department there, they just kind of missed that one. They didn't think that one through. There is other ways to do this in Australia. Landlords can rent a second or third condo out for short term up to 6 months. In the UK, it's 90 days. I guess, again, these are win-win-wins for everybody. And it's too bad we don't do that in the city of Vancouver, but maybe we will get back to that. Especially now we're going through these tough times with COVID-19. I think it's really imperative on the city to think of ways to once this is done, to generate for people to be able to make a little bit of extra money, whether it's landlords, tenants, and so on. So something to think about as we go forward. So that's just what I wanted to share with you today. Again, was the results. Only 300 of 2,000 listings ever made it into the long-term rental pool. And as long as we have people coming to Vancouver, we're going to have to find more creative solutions. And a better solution might really be to be building more rental units. Now that could be, normally it's a rental apartment building, a lot like you see the older ones in the West End. And an interesting anecdote I'll share with you is I had one of the VP of sales for a big developer here in Vancouver share with me that he said it to me like this: Christian, do you know it took the United States less time to announce and put a man on the moon than it takes for us here in Vancouver to propose and get a tower built? It takes us here 8 years. And that, my friends, I think is the real culprit. That is the issue. It takes too long to get something built, to get the approvals, the permits through the planning department. When you're looking at 8 years, you're looking at all, if we've got 40,000 people moving here every year, in 8 years, if those numbers are correct, and that's what the business journals tell us, that's over 300,000 people. And we're not adding enough supply. And that's really what it seems to boil down to. It's not a sexy solution or answer. Maybe that's why it doesn't get pointed out as enough. But certainly, Airbnb and short-term rentals, they aren't the big bad wolf. They aren't the problem here. It was just a way for people to make extra cash. At least that's what the results are showing us now. And one more point on this. I had a couple wonderful people that are my clients. They live and work in Vancouver. And recently they asked me about buying a property, a vacation home, a getaway place outside in Squamish. They like to go hiking. They like to do some fishing on the weekends. And they're working Monday to Friday, sometimes Saturdays, 10 hours a day. And I had to tell them, I'm sorry guys, you actually don't really have that option, or you do have that option, except now you're going to have to pay a speculation tax, and you could be fined by that municipality as well. Their plan, what they wanted to do, was to buy a vacation property, be able to use it on the weekends, right? Like we might, a cottage. And instead, they can't do that. Their hands are tied, handcuffed, because they have to leave it empty from Monday to Friday. And they can use it on the weekends. But if they do that, obviously they have to pay taxes to the province. And if you do that anywhere in some places, there's more taxes as well. So that's the concern. it's something that we've been able to do as Canadians, as North Americans, that second home outside the city. That right has been taken away from us, and that is a real shame, and it's something we need to think about as we go forward in the 2020s. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.